Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is April 27th, 2023. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025. This meeting of the Chatham ZBA is being conducted in person via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to punch in the conference ID number, which is 196-635-57, then hit the pound. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To authorize this, we'll need a roll call by all members for this hybrid form of meeting. Please state your name and whether you're in favor or not.
James M. Upson, I approve.
Jenny.
Virginia Fenwick, I approve.
Paul Semple, I approve.
David S. Nixon, I approve.
Randy Potash, I approve.
David H. Veach, I approve.
I would ask that any citizens or non-board members participating in the call via the phone, please give us your name and the last four digits of your phone number for ID purposes. The meeting is run as follows. The hearing notice is read by the lady to my right, who is Sarah B. Clark. She's the PPO for the town. That's the principal permitting officer. After that, the representative or the individual will present the appeal or application or whatever, or not, anyway. And then anyone in favor of the appeal we'll ask to speak. I'll make mention of that either here or on Microsoft Teams. Following that, I'd read any and all letters we had received. After that, I would ask for anybody who wishes to speak against the appeal or has a specific question to raise your hand and join the meeting. The applicant may very well rebut some of that testimony. Then we'd have board members asking direct questions to anyone present or who somehow was introduced into this application. Then, and when we were done, we would close the public hearing and go into deliberations. Deliberations are where we discuss it amongst ourselves, and the public is not invited to join unless one of the members introduces into the discussion individual. We would then take a vote. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to be successful, you need a supermajority. That means, in our case, there are 5 voters. Supermajority means you need to get 4 yeses. And the voting today would be Buck, Paul, myself, Randy, and Dave. Are there any questions? Well, I think we have a couple of minutes. Paul?
We do. We have the minutes of March 23rd and March 30th, 2023. I'll move approval. Let's do them individually. March 23, 2023, I'll move approval as published.
And Dave Veach seconds.
All right, we need a roll. Yeah,
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
and I approve.
And I will move approval of the minutes of March 30, 2023, as published.
Dave Veach seconds.
And Buck approves.
Paul approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Okay, thank you. Okay, Sarah, let's see. Number 1 on the list today is 23-025.
Application number 23-025, Joshua Zuckerman, care of William G. Litchfield, Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 403 Old Commerce Road, also shown in the town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 10I, Block 11, Lot 3. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of an addition and the relocation/addition of exterior mechanical system appliances. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 27.1 feet from the road and 29 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, where a 50-foot setback is required. The proposed addition will be nonconforming, and that it will be located 34.2 feet from the road where a 40-foot setback is required. The existing exterior mechanical system appliances, AC condenser and generator, are nonconforming and that they are located 23 feet from the westerly abutter. The relocated exterior mechanical system appliances will be nonconforming in that they will be located 21.1 feet from the westerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 2,679 square feet, 19%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,705 square feet, 19.2%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot contains 14,100 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required, and contains 23,980 square feet of land area where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Before you begin, Mr. Litchfield, Sarah, were these 3 copies?
Those are for Diane, Drive for David and Randy.
And you have a copy, and everybody? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, sorry for the interruption.
It's quite all right, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the applicant, John Zuckerman. I commend Sarah for her reading of the legal ad, which was more extensive than the project which is before you this afternoon. We are seeking a special permit for a 26-square-foot extension to the kitchen and necessary relocation of the existing non-conforming generator and air conditioning compressor. What Mr. Zuckerman would like to do in conjunction with interior renovations to the house is to add a very small area to his kitchen. He has kitchen designers who make more money than plumbers or electricians, and the kitchen designer has said that you need to have a shelf here and a cabinet there, the details of which I don't know and you may not care. But the goal is to expand the house by 26 square feet and to, in that lower left-hand corner, be built on pilings, not on a foundation. So I think I would be appropriate to go into the criteria, because you have a lengthy agenda, as to adequacy of the site. The site is adequate for a home built quite some time ago, notwithstanding its proximity to the street, to Stillwater Pond, setbacks and coverage. I think you can find the site to be adequate for the 26-square-foot addition and for relocation of the condenser and the generator. The coverage of the total lot, including the portion which is in the coastal flood zone or the inland flood zone, is only 11.3, and the exterior mechanical appliance system changes are less than 2 feet. As to compatibility of size, it's a neighborhood created under prior zoning. The lots and the houses vary considerably as to size, but what we have now and what is proposed is not inconsistent with neighboring properties, which is to say that if you approve the special permit, it will remain compatible. The degree of change is very small in either absolute or percentage terms. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, we have an array: lot size, coverage, proximity to the street, the sideline, the coastal or in the conservancy district. But the change is minor. 26 square feet of coverage is noted, but it's further from the street at 34 feet than our other parts of the house, which are 29 feet, where 40 feet is required. And in fact, we're more than 50 feet from the paved road, because Old Cummers Road is an old county layout and it's very wide. So we're approximately 50 feet back from the pavement. The setback for the mechanicals changes from literally inches, 23 feet to 21.1 feet. And as you know, it's in an area behind a fence. The whole thing is behind a hedge. And as to suitability of site, the site has been developed for residential use for a long time. The Conservation Commission has reviewed and approved it. It determined, in fact, the change in the location of the generator and compressor was to be so minor as to not even requiring a field change. And I think Sarah has that correspondence, which the chair will read. As to scale, siting, mass, views, and vistas, the scale and siting are appropriate. It's well suited to the existing pond front location. While it's an attractive home, the hedge and the stockade fence shield it anyway. The scale and the mass are not impacted by the small addition or by the relocation of the exterior mechanical appliance systems, which again are screened by vegetation. Views and vistas are not really at issue. The other criteria do not apply. The compatibility of use continues on as a residential use. We have town water. There's no change in the number of bedrooms. kitchens are not notably noisy, so I don't think we'll be producing any impact on noise and litter or on traffic flow and safety. Instead, the issue is, as you know, whether this proposed small addition and the relocation of the compressor and the generator behind the hedge, behind a fence as well, and further from the paved road than the legal ad suggests, is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It's a marginal or de minimis change at 26 square feet and literally inches for the generator and the air conditioning compressor. So in light of the criteria in the plans, I think that you can find that the proposed small addition and resulting increase in coverage with the relocated compressor and generator in this location is not substantially more detrimental, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here today on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you would like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have an email. This is from Judith Giorgio, the health agent for the town of Chatham. She writes on April 26th, "I have no concerns about the small addition of mechanical being added to this location." Then we have a note. This is from the Conservation Commission. Conservation Administrative Assistant Crystal Keon writes on April 25th, "The Conservation Commission held a public hearing on September 14th, 2022. Conservation will need an updated plan showing the new location of the generator. The proposed project was issued a -3 determination of applicability. The project as proposed has been conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and the town of," doesn't say Chatham, but it should, "Town of Chatham Local Wet Law Bylaw, Chapter 272 and regulations promulgated thereunder." That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone who wishes to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one with a question or to speak in opposition.
Okay, I'll say to the board, is there anyone that has a question?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. We'll start with Randy.
I would say it meets the criteria. It's certainly not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, and I support it.
I agree completely.
I'll second that.
I second that too.
And I agree. So I'll move to approve the application as submitted. I don't see a need for conditions in this situation.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves?
I approve.
Approve.
Dave Veach approves.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you very much.
Sarah, 23-029, please.
Application number 23-029, 21 Captain's Cove Lane LLC, care of George Gakidis, P.O. Box 1200, Onset, Mass. 02558. Owner of property located at 21 Captain's Cove Lane, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 10L, Block 10, Lot C2. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the reconfiguration and extension of the existing stairway. The existing dwelling is nonconforming, and it is located 47 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 11. The proposed stairway will be nonconforming, and that it will be located 46 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, where a 50-foot setback is required. The building coverage will remain nonconforming at 2,765 square feet, 15.5%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 17,810 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required, and contains 36,000 square feet of land area where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Good afternoon, members of the board. George Gakidis, 215 Onset Avenue, Wareham, GS Design Group, representing 21 Captain's Cove. Do the board members have copies of the
We do.
plans? So essentially, we have an existing 2 stair landings and stairs to 2 doors, and we're doing a reconfiguration to a single landing and steps. So it's really reconfiguration. We're probably 30 inches closer to the resource, which if you go back to to that plan right there, yeah. It's essentially this.
I'm sorry, because we're on TV, you have to either
Well,
have a hand mic or.
I apologize. The couple steps in the front essentially go about 30 inches closer to the resource, but the footprint isn't really changing much. So we feel it's, not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. No one can even see it.
Okay, ordinarily, we'd have you go through the criteria, but I don't think it's necessary unless anyone disagrees with me. Okay, that would be your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here today or in Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
There's no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have an email from Judith Giorgio, health agent for the town of Chatham. She writes on April 25th, "I have no concerns." Then we have a note from Crystal Keon, Conservation Commission Secretary. She writes on April 25th, "The applicant has yet to file an administrative review for this project." And then we have a letter. This is from Joel M. Bertuzzi, and his address is 13 Captain's Cove Lane. He writes on April 12th, "I'm writing in support of the proposed alteration of the existing stairway. Having seen the stairway being used in person, I can say that as originally designed and built, it is cumbersome at best. The proposed alterations do not increase the nonconformity of the house and will make the access to the home much better. The proposed improvements are not visible from any of the neighboring homes and should affect no one. I hope that you'll look favorably upon this application." That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against or has a specific question? If so, please indicate they'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one with a question or to speak in opposition.
Okay, then I'll ask the board, does anyone have a question? Okay, Randy.
What's the story with conservation in your application?
We had a verbal administrative approval. I don't think we ever received a written letter, but it was verbal.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves.
Randy approves?
Dave Veach approves.
And I do too. Okay, deliberations. Let's start with Dave.
Gee, I wish they were all this easy. This is definitely, it's certainly an improvement. I can see the need or the desire to change the entryway. It makes a lot of sense. It in no way is a detriment to the neighborhood. It meets all of our applicable criteria and is not substantially more detrimental, and I will support it.
Buck.
I feel sorry for your clients that something like this has to come before us, but it's not really coming before us. It's the costs that are incurred by the client to prepare and submit all the paperwork and drive from off Cape. I understand that it has to be that way. We have rules, and sometimes people get excited when you overstep your decision. So you just play it safe and let the cards, and we had to have the hearing. I'm sorry. But I obviously, it's no way substantially, it's not even detrimental. In fact, it's not even, it's an improvement. So I will support it.
Jenny.
I would too, if I were voting. It's an improvement. I think the comment that the stairs are cumbersome, I think that was generous on your part. Yeah, it's an improvement, and it's not, the changes aren't substantial.
Clearly meets our criteria. I will approve it.
Randy.
I agree with all my colleagues.
Okay, and
I'll move to approve the application as submitted, again, I think without conditions.
And Dave Veach seconds.
And Buck approves.
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members.
That's a unanimous decision, 5-0. Okay, next we have 23-026, please.
Application number 23-026, Boxwood Limited Partnership, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 307 Bridge Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16B, Block 16, Lot F1. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change non-conforming accessory structure on a conforming lot via the demolition of the existing stairway, boathouse, and pool deck, and the construction of a new stairway, boathouse, and elevated pool deck. Also proposed is the installation of an unpaved path. The existing boathouse is non-conforming, and that is located 20 feet from the easterly abutter. The existing pool deck is non-conforming, and it is located 16 feet from the westerly abutter. The proposed boathouse will be non-conforming, and that it will be located 20 feet from the easterly abutter, and the proposed elevated pool deck is non-conforming, and that it will be located 16 feet from the westerly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The lot contains 2.32 acres in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D, 2B of the protective bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield once again here on behalf of Boxwood Limited Partnership, which in more neighborly terms is the Stone family. David Stone is here. Jason Stone is online with us, and there may be some other Stone family members. The Stone family has owned this property in Bridge Street for more than 40 years. We're into the next generation at this point, or moving in the next generation, and it is time to do some improvements to some of the shorefront facilities. When you went down there, you probably didn't confuse it with Wequassett. There is a need for some upgrading and some improvements, and the Stones, after long deliberation and very deliberate planning and in contemplation of the costs, are now ready to do, with your approval, those improvements. You are aware of what is proposed. We're talking about rebuilding the existing boathouse. It'll be on the same footprint. It'll be 16.5 feet tall rather than 16 feet tall, which is a minimal change, well below the 20-foot limit. We're talking about redoing the ramp which exists now. I had trouble with it. The elevation or the angle isn't difficult. It's the lack of angling that's sort of difficult to walk up. So we're showing as shown there, proposing to have actual stairs. We would like to redo the deck that surrounds the pool, install a unpaved trail, and also a wheelchair access ramp. Sarah's cursor is being very helpful in showing all of those things. And that mention of the unpaved trail brings to mind the fact that this special permit has two separate aspects. And I'm going to assume, Mr. Chairman, you would like me to combine the criteria rather than going through them separately.
Correct.
Because the unpaved trail does not relate to a change or non-conforming structure. It relates to a straight special permit, as we call it. So I will, with that, move into the criteria as the adequacy of site, including building coverage and setbacks. We have a large site, 2.3 acres, and we have, as you know from having been down there, a shorefront pool, along with a deck, a boathouse, a wharf. All of them, however, are within the Coastal Conservancy District and are thus non-conforming. They were built before the bylaw in that regard. If you approve the special permit for the renovations and upgrading, you can do so based on finding that the site remains adequate for the reconstructed deck and the boathouse, both on their existing sites, that's the boathouse there, as well as the reconfigured stairs and path. Coverage is inapplicable. It's not an issue here. There's no change in any of the setbacks. As to compatibility and suitability of the site, compatibility with the neighborhood and suitability of the site, it is obviously a neighborhood of large homes on large lots. Locus is 101,000 square feet. And, excuse me, it is currently compatible with nearby properties, and if you approve the special permit, there will be no change. Standard numbers that I give you as to gross floor area and living area are not applicable, but with 170 linear feet of frontage on Mill Pond, the site is entirely suitable for a marine-related use, which is to say the boathouse, and the other related accessory uses. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, the lot itself more than complies, but all of the subject work is within the Coastal Conservancy District itself. I think you can find that the six-inch increase in the height of the boathouse, which is still well below the 20-foot limit, is not a significant increase in nonconformity, particularly since the boathouse and the pool deck are to be rebuilt on the existing footprints. And again, an unpaved path or trail is allowed by special permit in a coastal conservancy district. As to suitability of site, impact of the natural environment and slopes and wetlands, the site has been developed for residential use since Woodrow Wilson was in the White House, so I think that will continue on. The Conservation Commission, and the chair will read later, the Conservation Commission has reviewed this extensively, has already approved it, and has issued an order of conditions. It has been determined by them, the proposal has been determined by them to meet all performance standards, both under the State Wetlands Act and by the Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw. And again, an order of conditions has already been written. And as to the general permit, of course, a wharf and a boathouse necessarily go in a coastal conservancy district. As to scale, sighting, mass, views, vistas, and streetscape, the issues on this appeal have minimal, if any, mass. They are sited adjacent to the shore and about 600 feet back from Ridge Street, so there's not going to be any effect on the streetscape. As to the special permit, if you approve it, the scale and the mass are unchanged. The 6-inch change in height of the boathouse I don't think will be noticeable even from the far side of the mill pond. There's no change in views and vistas. As to compatibility of use, it is a residential use, and what we are seeking your blessing for are accessory residential uses, and again, the path itself is a compatible use. Traffic flow and safety, water, sewage, noise and litter, adequacy of utilities are not involved here. So the question, as you know, is whether reconstruction of the pre-existing non-conforming wharf, boathouse, and deck on their current footprints with relocated, reconfigured stairs, with a wheelchair access ramp, and an unpaved trail, but without any change in setbacks or resulting increases in nonconformities, whether those aspects are substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the current nonconforming structures. It's been reviewed by the Historical Commission in light of the age of the main house and also by the Conservation Commission, as I've indicated. Given the location and the inherent exposure to the natural elements, it is clearly time to upgrade and to replace or renovate, as the case may be, but without significant changes beyond safer stairs and the wheelchair access ramp, as well as the unpaved path. As for the broader special permit, what you're required to find is that the use will not be detrimental to the established or future character of the neighborhood, the town, and that the use involved will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw. On the facts and these circumstances in this location, I think you can make that finding, as well as to make the standard determination that the proposed small changes are not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate that you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First is an email. This is from Judith Giorgio, health agent. She writes on April 25th, I have no concerns about this proposed stairway and boathouse. Then we have a note on April 10th. This is from Crystal Keon, the Conservation Division Assistant for the Conservation Commission. She writes, the Conservation Commission held a public hearing on 3/2/2022. The proposed project was issued in order of conditions. The project as proposed has been conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Chatham Local Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 272, and regulations promulgated thereunder. Then we have a note. This is from Christina Bassett, Department of Community Development. She is the Historical Commission Staff Liaison. She writes, on April 6th, the Chatham Historical Commission heard this application August 16th, 2022, and they determined the home to be historically significant, but the changes did not materially diminish the home's historical significance, so no demolition delay was imposed. And that's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against or has a specific question? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting. Mr. Riley would like to join the meeting.
Thank you very much. Bill Riley on behalf of the Fleischman family, the neighbors to the Stones. And the Fleischmans enthusiastically support the proposed changes. There is a related issue regarding the septic system for the Fleischman property, which by easement is located on the Stone property. And so we've apparently just recently started discussing the aspects and the sort of the required protections to prevent damage to the septic system for the Fleischman property. Do you have that photo?
Would you like the site plan up?
Well, was it? No, I guess we didn't get it to you. Anyway, so the septic system consists of,
It's down here.
yeah, it doesn't show, you don't have an overall plan, so we can't show you. Here you go. All right, so that's the easement for the septic system. And there's a second portion of the septic system, which is actually just a little outside the easement. And so the families have been discussing, how the work's going to proceed and the septic system's going to be protected. And we're very close to an agreement. And this is going to surprise you, but the trustees of the Fleischman Family Trust, who are not Fleischman family members but are lawyers, imagine that, and they would like something in writing, like a little memorandum of agreement with the Stone family. I've been discussing it with Bill, and so we just received possible avenues for an agreement today, and I think we're extremely close to an agreement. And having in mind that you have a meeting next week, we would greatly appreciate it if you would consider continuing the meeting till next week so we can formalize our agreement regarding the protection for the septic system.
Is that it?
That's it, because we do support the program. We just have worries about how the vehicles and the heavy equipment going down. See, because the rectangle to the left is a tennis court, so they can't go there. So it's a pretty narrow area, but we're very close to an agreement. And because there's only 1 week, we thought that it would be fair to request a continuance while we formalize that agreement. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else either here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against or has a specific question?
I see no one else to speak.
Okay, questions from the board? Buck?
Buck has no questions.
No questions?
Paul?
I have no questions.
No questions.
And I have no questions.
Okay, I think this time we might discuss the request from Mr. Riley. Let's go to the legal department, which consists of Paul and Randy. Randy, what do you think of this request?
I didn't hear anything that made it sound like it had anything to do with our criteria at all, or whether or not this application is substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. So that's,
Paul?
I agree. I don't think that the issue that is being discussed between the parties with respect to the septic system has to impact our decision at all. So I think they can go ahead and arrive at their agreement or not arrive at their agreement. But, you know, I assume if there's some damage done to the septic system and they can't arrive at an agreement, then they'll deal with that. So I don't see a need for a continuance at this point.
Okay. Buck?
Sounds good to me.
Jenny?
I agree. Sounds good.
Dave?
Yeah, I was trying to sort it out myself, and I'm in agreement with it.
Okay. So we've had questions, deliberations. Jenny?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into
Sorry?
deliberations.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves?
approve.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. Jenny? Deliberations.
I viewed the property. It's lovely. The project, very nice project. I can see why you'd want to do that. Proposed it's an improvement. I especially like the fact that you're adding the wheelchair path and improving the stairs. I'm not voting, but if I were, I would support it.
Paul?
I agree. I think that both requests that are being made meet our criteria, and I intend to vote positively on those.
Randy?
I agree with Ginny and with Paul.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. An interesting set of stairs exist there, and I think replacing those will be a significant improvement in that respect. It's a nice project, and I will support it.
Buck?
I feel very comfortable stating that it's not only detrimental for it's not substantially more detrimental to the street, but also from the water. So on both counts, it's a plus. Thank you.
You know, I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was looking at it, I thought to myself, imagine trying to get that pool permitted in this day and age. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's right on the water. Anyway, so,
Well, I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the special permit will not be detrimental to the established or future character of the neighborhood and the town, and the use involved will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw with respect to the pathway. And on the facts and circumstances, can make the finding that a standard determination of the proposed changes is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Dave Veach seconds.
and I presume, Paul, there's no conditions.
I don't see a need for conditions on this.
Buck
the size of this
approves.
property. Paul approves.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I do also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. '23-030, please.
Application number 23-030, David G. and Elizabeth G. Renke, owners of property located at 57 Diane Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 6C, Block 66, Lot G 119. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming accessory structure on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing garage and the construction of a new garage with living space above. The existing garage is non-conforming and that is located entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 11. The proposed garage with living space will be non-conforming, and that will be located entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,788 square feet, 158.1%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,896 square feet, 167.6%, where 15% is the max, 15% but not more than 2,800 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming and that it contains 1,131 square feet of buildable upland and contains 7,100 square feet of land area, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw.
Good afternoon. My name is David Renke. I am the owner of the property at 57 Diane Drive, which my wife and I purchased in 1998 and where we live full-time. We are applying for a special permit to demolish an existing two-car garage and construct a two-car garage with living space above on the existing site. Both the existing structure and the proposed structure lie entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District. The existing building coverage is 788 square feet, or 12.6% of the lot coverage, and the proposed building coverage is 1,896 feet, or 13.4%, where 15% is allowed. So we feel as though the site is adequate enough to support our proposed structure, and both the existing and the proposed structures both lie within the setbacks required in an R20 zoning district. In terms of compatibility to the size, the proposed structure is compatible both in size and height of neighboring properties. The height of the structure is 24 feet and change, but is well within the boundaries of other properties in the area. Extent of the proposed increase, the existing structure's lot coverage is 660 square feet. The proposed structure is 752 square feet, which represents an increase of 13.9% of a non-conforming structure. Suitability of the site. The impact on neighborhood properties or natural environment is negligible in that the proposed structure is on the same site and footprint as the existing two-car garage lies now, which has been there since the early 1960s. Impact of scale, siting, and mass on neighborhood. The proposed structure, we believe, poses no impact on the scale, sizing, and mass of the neighborhood's visual character. Compatibility of the proposed structure with neighborhood uses. The proposed use of the living area above the garage is to provide additional living area for the grandparents when my 3 children, their spouses, and 6 grandchildren come to visit us on holidays and frequently during the summer period. The property as well can accommodate parking for 8 cars. Adequacy of methods of sewage disposal, source of water and drainage. The house currently has a 4-bedroom Title V septic system with 3 bedrooms currently designated in the main house as outlined in the Town of Chatham Property Summary Report. Water will come from the main house, and the septic system will be modified to meet Chatham Health Department requirements. We are aware that the Board of Health has responded and is requiring an IA modified system. We are in the process, and there's a letter from our engineer who is going to design a modification of the existing system that will meet with Chatham and DEP requirements. Impact on traffic flow and safety. Diane Drive is a private road in a quiet HOA neighborhood with few year-round residents, no summer rentals, and occasional visiting children during summer season, making for minimal traffic or safety concerns. The primary drivers around the neighborhood are the FedEx, UPS, and mail trucks. Noise and litter will be kept at a minimum during construction with the placement of a temporary construction dumpster on site. I actually work for the contractor who would be doing the proposed project, and will be involved both in site supervision and oversight as part of my responsibilities notwithstanding the fact that I'm the homeowner and I'm going to want things to fit into the neighborhood and people to be happy with what's going on. Utilities and other public services are adequate in the area. There's no visual impact on the neighborhood, and I would refer you to the letters written unanimously in support of our plans by neighbors and abutters. Number 12, the extent of lateral expansion is 2 feet over the existing structure lot coverage and does not appreciably impact the impervious area of the site. Lastly, I would just like to say that we take pride in maintaining and improving our property and feel that the proposed structure is compatible with the neighborhood uses and fits well within the visual character of the neighborhood in terms of size, scale, and architectural style, and will only enhance the neighborhood properties in the area. We have personally reached out to many of our neighbors to discuss and share the plans of our proposed plan, both to answer questions and deal with objections that they might have. And many have voiced support without such. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Okay. Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you'd like to speak.
I see no one to speak in favor.
The correspondence, we have a memo, email from Judith Giorgio. She writes on 4/25, I've reviewed the plan to add a one-bedroom carriage house. This proposal will require the approval of the Board of Health and must include an updated IA septic system for nitrogen removal in accordance with the Board of Health nitrogen loading regulation. This approval and septic permit is required prior to receiving the building permit. Then we have a note from Conservation Commission. Acting Agent Paul Whiteman writes on April 6th, as of April 6th, the applicant has not filed with the Conservation Commission.
We have our, okay, sorry.
We'll get to that later, okay? And we have 9 notes here in favor, which essentially say the same thing about how wonderful these folks are and how they support it. So unless you object, I will just read the names and addresses of the people who have written in favor.
That's fine.
If that's okay with you?
Yep.
First, we had Donna and Gwen Crowther at 14 Diane Drive. And then we had Salvatore Coluzzi, and he's at 33 Diane Drive. Then we have Andrew and Jane Abu, 49 Patterson Road, just around the corner. And we had John and Joanne Conroy, and they're at 39 Diane Drive. And we have a nice handwritten note by Robert and Marianne Fitzpatrick of 68 Diane Drive. And Mike and Marcy Farmer write that they're in favor, and they are at 32 Nantucket Drive. Kevin and Nicole McLaughlin, 34 Diane Drive. Carrie and Maureen Stanton, 74 Diane Drive. Lori and Jason Fromer, 22 Diane Drive. And that's it. Like I said, all 9 of them wrote, talking about what fine people the applicants are and how they have no objection to what they want to do. Is there anyone on the audience or Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, please indicate now you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, questions from the board? Paul?
I just, to clarify, we talk in our advertising about 158.1% on building coverage and 167.6%. Can we explain what the difference is between that and a 15% or 12% coverage?
Please.
It's based on the buildable upland area of the lot. That's why the percentages are so high. Since there's only 1,131 square feet of upland, the percentages are going to be substantial.
Okay, I thought that was the case, but I wanted to make sure the public was aware of that. I have no other questions.
You know, I skipped one note, and this was a letter from John Spink, 59 Clay Street in Marlborough. He wrote on April 27th regarding the septic system. The current septic system was designed for 4 bedrooms. The existing house has only 3 bedrooms. The proposal to rebuild the garage with a bathroom on the 2nd floor. The Board of Health has requested a nitrogen removal system be installed. A nitrogen removal system is to be designed from the DEP available options. This system is to be installed in the existing system. There is to be an application to the Board of Health to approve a permit to modify the existing system, which would add to the system piping to add the bedroom in the garage and to add a nitrogen removal system. And again, that's from John Spink. Okay, back to questions. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So I just want to make sure I have the numbers right, just for the benefit of the public. Your house, the main house, is that 1,128 square feet, the whole house?
Square footage?
Yes, like the
It's,
living area?
It's 1,688 square feet, I
Oh.
believe.
Okay. I have trouble sometimes seeing the numbers on that, applications. So, and then what is the living area of the proposed carriage house?
It is 752 square feet.
Okay, yeah,
And it basically adds a living area, a bedroom, bath, and a good-sized storage closet, which we are sorely in need of in both our house and garage.
right. And then it looks like, is that a full bath?
Yes,
And what about, there's a sink?
there's a sink, a wet
Separate and
bar,
distinct from the sink for the bathroom, correct?
Correct.
So you could use that to,
to at least get water and, have a small fridge out there or something for beverages, that sort of thing.
what about a microwave? Is there gonna be that in there?
It's possible. Right now, we're not planning on that. It's primarily a living area, and we would be eating in the main house, with the rest of the family. It's just providing bedroom space and living area space for separation of various sizes and ages of children and adults with different needs and desires.
Okay, and what about like a toaster oven or any kind of oven?
We'd probably have a coffee pot, for the morning, and possibly a toaster, but it would basically just to get us started in the morning before, somebody went into the main house for meals.
Okay, and now, if I could, I have a question for Jay Briggs. So Jay, what makes this different than a dwelling? Is it that there's no micro and no stove in there now?
It appears that the thing that makes this not a dwelling is that there's no cooking appliances associated with this structure.
And what's the definition of a cooking appliance? Because I looked and I didn't see.
Well, I don't think we have a definition of cooking appliance, but cooking as a general term, like you mentioned a microwave, that would be for heating food. I don't think that would necessarily be for cooking, but
Okay,
the big thing, we have a lot of accessory structures in town that have bedrooms that can't be dwelling units, and they just don't put a stove in.
could this be?
This will have to be an accessory structure.
Or could it be a
Can't be a
dwelling?
dwelling unit. It doesn't qualify as a dwelling unit.
No,
It's got one means of egress on the second floor. You need 2 means of egress for a dwelling unit.
okay,
It doesn't show any cooking. It'll be conditioned under a building permit not to have a stove and no cooking apparatus, and the occupancy permit will also state that it is not allowed to be a dwelling unit.
thank you.
A toaster oven, Jay?
Really? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know if it's.
somebody can go down to the store and buy a toaster oven and put it in, and I won't know about it.
Only if you were down there at the same time.
Right.
It strikes me that might have the potential down the road to become an ADU. I'm just,
It wouldn't be allowed to be an ADU.
unless they created a second means of egress, or,
Well, they're only allowed to have one dwelling unit on the lot. They don't have the required buildable upland to have a
Oh,
second.
right, to have a.
They can't have a
okay,
guest
so they
house.
it can't meet the ADU.
Right, can't meet the criteria.
What's the difference between a carriage house? What is a carriage? We don't have that
There is,
definition,
no,
do
we
we?
don't, we don't have a definition for that, but that's usually where you store the horses and the wagon.
No, in fact, Dave, I was going to propose a condition that there shall not be a dwelling unit, just to make sure it doesn't happen.
Okay, sure. I just was wondering whether it was possible down the road. And then, did you want to address the Conservation Commission's note or something?
We're on their schedule for April 3rd.
Okay, great. I have no questions.
I mean, May 3rd, yes,
I
sorry.
have no other questions, Dave.
Buck?
So, this is an interesting application. This is an interesting application in that my issues are not with the applicant, but with the zoning bylaw. We have a lot of definitions in that 92, 94 pages. And I couldn't find a definition for living space, so I wanted to ask the commissioner, can he tell me, did I misread it, or it's not there?
Let me look in the bylaw right now, but you probably didn't miss anything. But living space would be anything other than necessarily a bedroom, you know, like a living room or den, dining area. I don't see a definition in the bylaw for living space.
So my reason for asking that is, my second question to the commissioner, what is the difference between a living space and a guest house?
Well, a guest house is a dwelling unit. A guest house is allowed in many of the residential zones based on if you meet the area requirement for buildable upland in excess of what's required for the lot to begin with, an extra 20,000 square feet. This entire lot is 7,100 square feet, and most of it's in the Conservancy District. And just one more thing, I mean, we don't look at building coverage in terms of percent on a lot like this. We're looking at 2,800 square foot maximum building coverage on a lot like this.
All right. And this is interesting question. After the certificate of occupancy is issued, if it is issued, does the town have any, or has the town, in the future they might decide to address this, but right now, is the town's policy to go in and inspect this living space to see if in fact it has been upgraded with cooking appliances?
No.
In the bylaw, there is something about no person shall construct a new residential dwelling unit, which this isn't, but no person shall construct a new residential dwelling unit in the Conservancy District, which this current structure is. The way you look at it is a garage with a living space. So the question is that one structure or is that two structures together? In other words, there's a garage and there's a living space. That's kind of a combined building. But I don't see anything in the bylaw that says there's such a thing as a garage with a living space. So I'm looking at it as a living space that could be just on the forget the garage, and they just eliminate that and just drop this living space on the ground. Could they do that?
Well, you can't have a secondary dwelling unit on the property, and it's in the floodplain, and it would have to meet floodplain requirements if it were to be allowed. So I think the only way to permit this type of thing would be to do with the garage on the first floor, which is allowed in the floodplain.
Yep.
You'll have to have flood vents and so on and so forth. But the definition, I just want to read the definition of dwelling unit. And the bylaw says, dwelling unit means one or more rooms designed to be used as separate living quarters with cooking, sleeping, and sanitary facilities for one family. So the way you get the accessory structure not to become a dwelling unit is to remove one of those things. You could remove the sanitary facilities. Nobody wants to do that. You could remove the bedrooms. Nobody wants to do that. That's the primary reason for people doing this. The easiest thing for people to eliminate would be the cooking or the stove. Now, what people do after we issue a certificate of occupancy, I don't know. And I can't project that, and I don't want to open that can of worms, but they can't have a secondary dwelling unit on this property.
And it's already been stated, I think, by a couple of people, but the buildable uplands is 1,138 square feet. And if it was a residential dwelling unit, they would require 40,000 square feet of land. Isn't that correct? R20 plus 20?
Well, to get a secondary dwelling unit, and again, the floodplain takes that out of play right away because you can't have a new dwelling unit in the floodplain in the Conservancy District. But you do need an extra 20,000 square feet of buildable upland area for a guest house, above and beyond what's required for the zoning district.
Thank you very much.
Jenny?
You really have essentially answered the questions I had. No kitchen, one means of egress, no microwave, no stove, in the grandparents' living quarters, correct? That's
Correct.
what your intent is, and no intent to rent it.
No.
Yeah, those were all my questions, thanks.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves?
All approves?
Approve.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. Deliberations. Randy?
Any way I could pass and go last? I don't like it, so I'm gonna be the skunk at the picnic here. I'm not saying I'm not gonna vote for it yet, but I think it's detrimental to the neighborhood because it's just like two houses on one small lot, right on the corner. And I'm the type of person, I get a gut feeling at the beginning, and I'm almost always right. That, oh, let's put it this way, I continue to think I'm right. Even after I explore it, I do continue to think I'm right, and I think I'm right here too, because, and it's not about your intent, that's not one of the criteria. I have no problem with you and your intent, I mean, I like to have space for my family too, and I have an addition on my house that we already bought it like that, but it's over the garage, and it's a big bedroom with a bathroom and closets, and that's it. Could we put other stuff there? Yes, we could rent it, we could do a bed and breakfast there, easy, make a fortune. But yours has more than that, because yours is a separate building, and it has a living room space in addition to the bedroom, and it has a separate sink, which my house does not have, so we'd have to use the bathroom sink if you wanted to cook, and that's kind of gross to me. So I find that there's a lot of differences in what you have going on there and a garage with a living space on top. I see a huge distinction. And the fact that it's on the corner of a small lot, I think it's detrimental to the neighborhood. Whether or not it's substantially, I'm not sure. It might be. And all the letters from the neighbors, that's great. But I don't always give as much stock to those as other people do. So I start off with that. I apologize for any bad feelings you have, but.
Dave Veach?
Well, even though I don't have the same kind of situation, but I feel like I understand the desire to create this space. And I think that, I mean, I'm just thinking of other instances in the past where we've had, they're not dwellings, but pool houses with bedrooms, and it's not it's not frequent, but it does come across from time to time that people, they're allowed X number of bedrooms on the property, and they decide to move one of them to a separate building, maybe convert the garage or whatever. So I don't see this, and having heard from a significant portion of the neighbors speaking for themselves, this is a case where my inclination would be to consider that as the neighborhood, largely speaking, saying this is not substantially more detrimental to us. And so I can find, for a number of reasons, I think it meets our other criteria that apply, and I will support it.
Buck?
So I'm sorry that I'm looking at problems I see in the bylaw. Has nothing to do with you personally. Depending on how this goes, might be a landmark decision. But when the previous representative for the previous application said the purpose of the bylaw, and I think his words exactly, I wrote it down, was the general purpose and intent of the bylaw. And I'm not an attorney, and I'm hoping that two chairs to the left of me will comment during his opinions on whether or not my logic is defendable or not. I think it's defendable, but I'm not qualified to represent the town on these decisions. But one of the things that bothers me is we're listening to your personal story, but that doesn't cover the next owner and the next owner and the next owner. And I feel that one of the things that we have to look at when we make decisions are we have to look down the road and not just a snapshot in time. In my mind, the only thing that makes this living space different from a dwelling unit is an oven or a stove or a range, which could be installed by any appliance store on the Cape, and that we don't inspect after the certificate of occupation is issued. We're totally leaving that up to any owner to convert that to a dwelling. And I'm sure that that's a sticky point legally, but I'm looking at the fact that we're trying to manage growth in this town and prevent overdevelopment. And obviously, we've mentioned there's no way are you close to the land requirements for a dwelling, a residential dwelling unit. You're in the you're in the floodplain, which makes it impossible. If somebody put an oven in there, I don't know about that second egress. You would need that to be called a residential dwelling unit, but I'm fuzzy on that. Doesn't seem like you have to put extra steps in it. We're overdeveloping a small lot, 14,000 square feet, 14,200. We're putting in, I know there's two lots, but when we look at the assessor's map for 57 Diane, it's 14.2. They do lots, was it 119 and 129, I think? You have two lots and you have a line down the middle, but the lot size is 14,000, where for a dwelling unit, it would have to be 40,000 of buildable upland. We're putting something together based on some very loose standards, but I can't wait for Mr. Semple to offer his professional opinion.
Well, I'd be more interested right now in Judy's opinion.
I understand what Mr. Upson is saying. If we were building this from scratch, I might feel differently, but the garage, and I know that it's gonna be demolished and redone, but it exists today, you can see it in the context of the house, the neighborhood, the property, and the new proposed garage is really very minimally larger, a couple of feet, and the height is 24. So I feel like visually, it fits in with the neighborhood. I thought the lot has the space for it because it exists today. And I understand the interest in adding the extra living space. It's a large garage. So once my questions were answered about the difference between the dwelling, which I think is a great point, there is very specific criteria in the bylaws about dwelling versus an apartment garage. I would be, I was comfortable with the fact that the differences, which is no cooking appliances and only one egress, would meet the criteria.
Now we'd like to hear from Paul.
Well, let me first of all say I am not town council, and there's no way I definitely have the answer to be all answers with respect to a lot of legal questions. And I understand the concerns that have been expressed by Randy and by Buck with respect to this project. At the same time, we have a number of units that we have approved with restrictions on cooking facilities, which take them out of the dwelling unit concept. And really, the bylaw acts to protect owners in that sense. So in that sense, if they're going to comply with the bylaw as it exists, then it seems to me they have a legitimate expectation that we're going to comply with the bylaw and say, all right, in that situation, if you do not have cooking facilities, as the commissioner has said, then we're not going to consider it to be a dwelling unit. The thing that takes it a little bit beyond that in this situation is the fact that they're in a conservation zone, a flood zone, and we have an even more concern about establishing a dwelling unit in a flood zone. But that, again, I think is in perhaps a new building arrangement which did not previously exist. Here, we've got a garage. It does visually, it seems to me, fit into the neighborhood. The neighbors have said that it seems to them that this project fits into the neighborhood. So I think I would be inclined to err on the side of allowing the homeowner to go forward with the condition that it cannot become a dwelling unit. There'd be no cooking facilities in it. And I think in that way, we're complying with the bylaw, providing some flexibility to allow this project to go forward.
Well, it's not easy. I hear what Randy and Buck say, and their concerns jive with mine, particularly down the road. You know, what happens today is not what's going to happen with the next one. And that's what bothers me more than anything, because if we condition it, that's it. I mean, whoever, you should sell the house to at one time or whatnot, this is what they should have to live with. But as the building commissioner pointed out, there's no one watching them to see what happens. And they might not even know it. And the next buyer might not even realize that they can't put an oven in there. They say, what a great, what a great unit this is for my family, or maybe I want to rent it, maybe. Well, to rent it, I got to put an oven in. Who's going to take it? Nobody. So it's a difficult decision. On the other hand, I respect this gentleman. I think that what he says it's going to be today is what it's going to be. I'm sure it'll be, and he obviously is well enough liked by the entire neighborhood that they think what he's going to do will be fine for the neighborhood. But that's not tomorrow, and that's my problem. So what I say to you, sir, is,
Dave, there's,
oh,
could I do just one other thing that I thought of, and I don't know if this
Sure.
has any bearing for members, but another, a plus for the town would be the installation of a IA system, the upgrading of the septic system, which they're seeking in this project, is something that the town gets benefit of as well, so.
good point, good point. Anybody else want to add anything extra into it?
Well, I would also point out that the conditions that we place on it are a part of the record with respect to the property itself.
Oh, yeah.
And purchasers presumably in doing their due diligence with respect to the purchase would see the conditions that we place on it.
I wish I agreed with you, Paul, but, you know, we've seen too many builders come in that we've approved something with conditions and they just don't even look at them. You know, I don't have faith in that. But,
One of the things, that's twice tonight. That'll get me in trouble.
you're gonna give Ginny a stick, I should just whack you once.
Yeah, how come you didn't catch that? I thought I heard Paul say something about we've done this plenty of times before in other applications. I have heard many times that each case is unique and there is no precedence. I don't happen to believe that, and I haven't voted that way ever on the time I've served here. But so I'm not being hypocritical by trying to hang my hat on that one statement, but I'm not sure that the other ones that we did, I might have not dug my heels in as deep as I did today and feel a little remorse that I hadn't questioned this before. I can rattle off 3 places that I see daily where we have people that have taken a garage and put living space over it. And living space to me, I have a problem with the bylaw. It's not this living space over a garage. I think it's a new living space. There isn't a living space there now, and we're adding it to a garage. And in my mind, I don't think you can just call that a garage with a living space, because we don't define living space. The closest definition, in my opinion, is it's a garage with a guest house over it that we can condition that, and we can do all that legal stuff to make sure that the people check the deed and find out they can't have an oven. But there's too many people in this town that know that once you have the CO, all bets are off. So I think I'm sticking to my original opinion.
Okay, so, circling back to you, sir. You've heard some concerns up here. And Randy didn't indicate which way she was going to vote. I didn't indicate which way I was going to vote. We're just talking about, Buck didn't necessarily say he was going to vote no. So, you could let us go forward and we'll take a vote. Or if there's something you think you would want to tweak and change, you could ask for withdrawal. The difference is, if you go for a vote and the answer is no, you cannot come back to us for 2 years unless you get the planning board as well as ourselves to agree it's substantially different than what you brought initially. If you withdraw, you can come back anytime you want. Well, you gotta pay the money again, but you can come back anytime you want. So, if you'd like, I could ask for a straw vote
I think we're going to withdraw at this point. And we'll reconfigure or relook at what we plan to do with that space on the second floor.
Okay. So that's a formal request?
Yes.
Okay. Paul?
I will move to grant the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves?
Okay, Buck, your vote yes?
All approves?
Approve.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sarah, let's go on to 23-028, please.
Application number 23-028, 104 Aunt Nabby's Lane Realty Trust, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 104 Aunt Nabby's Lane, also shown in the town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 10B, Block 23, Lot 3. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of a partial second-floor addition. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 2 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District and 12.7 feet from the easterly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The proposed second-floor addition will be nonconforming in that it will be located 13.3 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The building coverage will remain 2,528 square feet, 20.3%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 2 dwellings where only one is allowed, 79.2 feet of frontage where 100 feet is required, and contains 16,506 square feet of land area and 12,471 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Ed and Deborah Schwabe. Deb is the trustee of 104 Aunt Nabby's Lane Realty Trust. She is here with us electronically. Also here today is our builder, Bob Vath. What the Schwabes would like to do is to put a partial second story on the existing cottage. It doesn't count for anything except for familiarity with the neighborhood. Deb's great-grandfather built this cottage in 1920, and it's been passed down. It's known, the Historical Commission has a file on it. It's the L.L. Smith House, and L.L. Smith was her great-grandfather, became then L.E. Smith, and then her mother and father, Bob and Evelyn Burkhart, and then Deb's family has lived here since. It's obviously, from having been out there, it's a wonderful site with a view of Oyster River. But as times and families change, the Schwabes would like to put a partial second story over the house as shown there. Sarah was kind enough to put up the site plan, or that's the elevation as well. And there are, as Sarah indicated in the hearing notice, multiple nonconformities, but there's nothing terribly unusual about the nonconformities that this lot has compared to others in the neighborhood. I can go into the criteria, and then we can talk about, as shown there, including the nonconformities of the second dwelling unit, but pre-existing nonconforming, a cottage, which is much, much closer to Aunt Nabby's Lane. This house itself is much closer to Oyster River than it is to Aunt Nabby's Lane. It's about 100 feet back from Nabby's Lane, and I don't know what the vertical fall is, but it's about 30, 35 feet back from the revetment. So as to the criteria, adequacy of site, including building coverage and setbacks, there are obviously multiple existing nonconformities, but the site is adequate for the home built a century ago. I think you can find that the site is adequate for the addition of a partial second floor, which will allow for additional living area, but will have no change whatsoever in setbacks or in coverage. As to compatibility of size, on the third page of the handout, you have the numbers for the neighborhood. The neighborhood was developed many, many years ago, before zoning and under prior zoning. The sizes of the houses vary considerably, and obviously some of the newer ones are much, much larger. If you approve the special permit, it will remain compatible. Even with 2 dwellings on this lot, the gross floor area, the combined gross floor area and living area are less than that of several individual adjacent homes. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, you know that you have existing lot size, frontage, coverage, street, sideline, and conservancy district setbacks, but there's no increase in nonconformity if you approve the special permit. The proposed second story will meet sideline setbacks, 25 feet on either side. It'll be 25 feet on either side, only has to be 15, and it'll be 11 feet further back from the coastal conservancy than is the existing structure. As to suitability of site, again, the site has been developed for residential use for over 100 years. The Conservation Commission has reviewed this and has approved it under a request for determination of applicability. They determined the change essentially to be without environmental impact because it is on the existing footprint. As to scale, sighting, mass views, vista, streetscape, again, we're set back far, this house is set back far from Mount Nabby's Lane. It's the original cottage has been enlarged and modernized over the years. Modernized may be an overly strong word. It's been updated. We would like to modernize it by the addition of the partial second floor. It's certainly well suited to its location. But again, with this house being 100 feet back from the street itself is not exactly a thoroughfare. The scale and the mass are not significantly affected by the addition of a partial second story. There's no change in views and vistas. As the compatibility of use, the residential use remains unchanged. Town water and sewer. The chair will read a comment from the Board of Health. We worked with Judy Giorgio and will continue to do so and tweak the first floor plan to make sure that the front office is not viewed as a basement, as a bedroom rather, and we'll necessarily work with the Board of Health in that regard. And Stephanie Sequin from Ryder and Wilcox, as well as Bob Vath, will coordinate in that regard. The other criteria, traffic flow and safety, noise, and litter, are not really applicable here. So the question is, as you know, whether the addition of a partial second story on the existing footprint, and thus without any change in setbacks or increase in nonconformity, is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the current non-conforming house on a non-conforming lot. It was, in addition to conservation, it's been reviewed by the Historical Commission, and again, the owners and their predecessor family members have been good stewards of the property since the 1920s. Now, though, they're seeking somewhat more living space while respecting the site and the neighborhood, which this proposal achieves. Ed and Deb sent out a note to all of their neighbors back in December, I think, advising them what was going on. No problems there. So I think given the criteria in the plans, you can find that the addition of a partial second story without any change in coverage or any increase in nonconformity in a neighborhood that has seen and is continuing to see far greater changes is not substantially more detrimental. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here on Microsoft Teams who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one who wishes to speak in favor.
Correspondence. First is a memo from Judith Giorgio, the health agent for the town of Chatham. She writes on 4/11, I have reviewed the plan to renovate. The plan as proposed does not add septic flow to the property. The property is approved for 3 bedrooms. They must convert downstairs office/bedroom to office/laundry with cased opening and remove walls in entry hallway. There's a note from the Conservation Commission from Crystal Keon, the Division Assistant. She writes, the Conservation Commission held a public hearing on April 5th, 2023. The proposed project was granted a -3 determination of applicability. The project as proposed can be conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and the local town wetland bylaw, Chapter 272, and regulations promulgated thereunder. And we have a note. This is from Christina Bassett. She is the Historical Commission staff liaison, and she writes on April 6th, the Chatham Historical Commission heard this application March 7th, 2023, and they determined the home to be historically significant, but the changes do not materially diminish the home's historical significance, so no demolition delay was imposed. And that's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here on Microsoft Teams who would like to speak either against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in opposition or with a specific question.
Okay, questions from the board? Dave?
Yeah, I just have one, I have one question that I was a little surprised to see, but I couldn't tell. I'm looking at the elevation drawings, and it's not quite clear to me. And first, I want to say, I'd like to say this is not, I'm raising this issue more out of a question with respect to the design, and not because I think it's a zoning issue necessarily. But well, the front elevation doesn't show. Sarah, if you had up the sort of bird's eye view or whatever we have, and maybe start there. So on this, when you look at this perspective, you can, it appears to me that what I'm going to call the 12-pitch rakes on the side are stepped out just a little bit in order to define the difference between the dormers, if you will, and the wall, the back wall of the house. When I come around to the right elevation, I can see, or that's the left elevation that we're set. So I can see that treatment show on the elevation. You can see just a little strip of roof coming down on the side of that second floor, right there. The plan's not showing that on the front wall. And I'm wondering if that's an oversight. It seems unusual to me that you go to that work to put it on the back and not do the same on the front. So
If I could, Mr. Chairman, Bob Vath, our builder, I'm far from a builder, so if I could defer to Mr. Vath to respond.
Yes, Mr. Bath, we require folks to take off their hats because of the television. Thank you very much. That's okay.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to call me here.
Yeah, that should be mirrored. That was just that should be corrected. But
That's-
it should be mirrored on both sides, you are correct.
Yeah, that's what, so
Yeah.
you're gonna do the same treatment, you're gonna
Yeah,
just
we're gonna
fur
build out
that
the
out.
rakes, we're gonna build out the rakes so it doesn't look so boxy.
Right,
And that's what the owner wanted, and the architect or designer had drawn it on the backside, but didn't mirror it on the front.
Oh,
So yeah,
that was
that should be mirrored. That
Great,
should-
that was my only concern, because you go to all this work, it would look so much better.
Oh,
That would
absolutely.
not look good the way it's drawn
Yep,
there. so-
absolutely.
Okay,
That was our intent. So,
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, questions?
And it's not a gambrel, so I'm happy.
Ginny?
No, I have no questions.
Paul?
I have no questions.
Randy?
No questions.
Nor do I.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds,
Buck approves?
All vote yes.
and Dave Veach approves.
And I vote yes. Deliberations. Buck?
It's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood because half the homes down there are 3 times bigger, especially on the other side of the river. So I'm forced to support it.
All right. Ginny?
I think the proposed plan is relatively modest. According to my calculation, 20% change in mass of the house, not including the below grade. And the height of the house at 7 feet is less than what is the max by a few feet. So I agree. I think it's the compatibility of what they proposed within the neighboring properties is there. And the extent of the proposed changes in the nonconformity is, Mr. Litchfield already covered that. And I think the impact of scale, siting, and mass meets the criteria. So I would support it.
Paul?
Yes, I agree. I think it meets the criteria, and I don't think it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, so I'll support it.
Randy?
I agree with all my colleagues.
As do I.
And I do too.
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. I guess the question would be, when are we going to be doing construction? And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I could respond, Mr. Semple. We understand that the board ordinarily, particularly in quote-unquote summer neighborhoods impose limitations on exterior construction. So I just talked to Mr. Vath. The Schwabes would like to begin as soon as possible, which special permit would be available generally a month from today, and I know Mr. Briggs is instantaneous in issuing building permits. If the Schwabes could have the month of June to do some work and then come back after Labor Day, they would be fine with that. So if you impose a limitation, one from July 1st to Labor Day is something around which we could work.
And do you think that's consistent with what their neighborhood is looking for from your discussions with?
I can't speak for the neighbors. It really wouldn't be appropriate. I don't know what their expectation is.
Well, let's think about what kind of work are we thinking would be done between now and July 1?
Could I ask Mr. Vath to come up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Schwabe is online, so if she wants to chime in, perhaps, if the chairman welcomes her, perhaps Sarah could respond.
Mr. Vath?
Our hope was that we'd be able to get the second floor framed roof on, and basically the appearance of getting sidewall shingles is next to impossible these days. So our hope was just to have windows in and it type-hard, basically ready for the interior mechanicals, but we will wait until after Labor Day to start all that work.
So what you're proposed to do, wouldn't that interfere with the use of the home during the summer?
No, they're not going to use the home.
Oh.
They're not going to use the home while it's under construction.
I see.
No.
Okay, well,
No,
that
that's
takes care of that.
That's not their plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds as if it would be reasonable to do the July 1 date.
How about June 30th?
June 30th, works fine. All right, well, then I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles would be contained on site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner, that between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed, no work shall be permitted on weekends, and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves?
Paul approves?
Randy approves?
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Sarah, I think we have one left, 23-033, please.
Application number 23-033, Breathwood Condominiums, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 305 Main Street and 15 School Street. Also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessors Map 16C, Block 60, Lot 33. The applicant seeks to modify special permit number 22-074 granted on November 3rd, 2022, which allowed for a new foundation in addition to the dwelling at 305 Main Street and the demolition of the existing unnumbered dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling, now 303 Main Street. The applicant now seeks to modify the special permit to allow for an increase in building coverage and further encroachment into the Coastal Conservancy District floodplain elevation 11. The approved building coverage was 2,727 square feet, 15.9%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,971 square feet, 16.3%, where 15%, but not more than 2,800 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 3 dwelling units where 1 would be allowed and contains 17,156 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D 2B of the Protective Bylaw. Mr. Chair, I would just like to note that I made a typographical error in the legal ad, and the actual coverage that is proposed is 2,791 square feet. The 16.3% is correct. That is what they are asking for. But I just wanted to let everyone know that.
Shucks. Okay, Mr. Riley.
Good afternoon, Bill Riley on behalf of Breathwood Condominium. This is a situation reminiscent of the movie Cool Hand Luke. I'm sure you all remember that, where the sheriff says, what we have here was a failure to communicate. And so Dave Clark and Wendy Jones, who were the professionals working on this project, were working with Karen Kempton, with whom you're familiar. There had been a, do you need a throat lozenge? Anyway.
Comment.
So they've been working with the Emerson family first. And the little cottage, which the Emersons had proposed, was 62 square feet smaller than the cottage proposed by the new owners, the Houghtons. And at one point, Karen told Wendy, well, there's not going to be any change in the cottage, but then there was a change, and so that information didn't get conveyed to Wendy, so she left the square footage of the earlier design in her plan. Now, the building plan that was approved includes the 62 square feet. So we're not asking for a larger building, we're just correcting the numbers that were contained in the last decision. So as I say, it's 62 square feet, so the total area, total building coverage on the site would be 2791. It's still less coverage than the existing structures. The existing structure that was removed was 995 square feet, and the new structure, even with the 62 square feet, is only 614 square feet. So can you scroll up so we can see the numbers in the lower left corner, Sarah? There you go. Whoops, there you go. So if you look at of the three sets, you look at the bottom one, that's 2941 where they were, 2727 was what was approved, and then adding 64 square feet, I thought it was 62, brings it up to 2791 square feet, 16.3%. So we're still substantially below the coverage from the existing building. And again, the architectural plans that were approved contain the 64 square feet. So I hope that you can grant this modification. We don't think there's any change that would be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Is there anyone here on Microsoft Teams that would like to speak in favor of this?
I see no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have a memo from Judith Giorgio, health agent, on 9/6. She wrote, I have reviewed the plan to rebuild and rebuilding the existing cottage of the property. A septic plan has been approved. Septic flow will remain at 2 bedrooms. That's for School Street. Then we have a note from the Conservation Commission dated April 6th. Crystal Keon writes, the Conservation Commission held a public hearing on April 5th, 2023. The field change was approved. The project as proposed can be conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Local Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 272, and regulations promulgated hereunder. Then we have a letter dated April 20th. It's from Janet and Laura Weintraub. Actually, Laura's name is Weintraub Beck. So we write, as owners of the property at 327 Main, we are writing to object to application 23-033, seeking to modify special permit 22-074, seeking permission for an increase in building coverage and further encroachment into the Coastal Conservancy District. Our family has owned property in Chatham for more than 35 years, and we love Chatham and hope to always have a place here. One reason is what an outstanding job the town has done to preserve and protect Chatham's natural beauty, unique coastal environment, and historic charm. These are not easy feats in the modern world, and the town is to be commended for consistently addressing issues proactively to protect and preserve the history and legacy of the past 400 years. As you know, the purposes, well, I guess maybe main purposes of the Chatham Conservancy District are to, 1, protect persons and property from the hazards of flood and tidal waters that may result from unsuitable development in or near bog and marshes along water course and in areas subject to flooding. And 2, to preserve the amenities of the town and conserve natural conditions. These are important long-term goals to ensure the safety of our drinking water and the natural habitat for Chatham wildlife, as well as the preservation of property otherwise subject to possible erosion. We believe that the special permit being sought now would be counter to those goals. The Cranberry Bog and Marsh, which constitute and abut our property and the properties around us, are already subject to periodic flooding and water encroachment, and therefore to the expected erosion that it brings. To allow this permit, which would further expand the building coverage on the non-conforming property, thus significantly further reducing the area for ground absorption, will exacerbate this flooding considerably. Avoiding this is crucial to the ecosystem and public safety, particularly as many of the homes in the area have septic systems rather than public sewers. When we and some of our neighbors have sought to trim branches of trees on our private properties, we've been denied permission in order to protect the wetlands. Although frustrated by this, we respect the reasoning and protective intent of the town's decision. So we were surprised the initial special permit was granted to these property owners in November, given how carefully we know Chatham has previously protected coastal areas from encroachment and further flooding. And now this development is seeking to cover significant additional ground and further endanger the natural habitat and historical properties of this neighborhood. If trimming branches poses a threat, how can this ground coverage not do so? We respectfully request this application be denied. And then we have an email. This is from Patricia Wortham Ullman, and it's dated April 16th. My name is Patricia W. Ullman, and I live at 331 Main. My family and I have been coming to Chatham since I was 10, and I'm now 74. The changes and the expansion and building of larger and larger homes and now swimming pools have only exacerbated the issues of sewage, erosion, leaching into our drinking water, flooding, the leaching into our drinking water, again, and soil of dangerous bacteria, human waste and toxic chemicals, density and traffic, uses of our town water, irrigation, and concerns, as well as this particular case. The blatant and precedent-setting encroachment of non-conforming dwellings in an area that is part of the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 11. These people want to modify the special permit that was already granted in November 22. By now asking for yet another special permit to allow for another increase in building coverage and further encroachment into the Coastal Conservancy District. This will directly impact those of us who are abutters to this area of the old Cranberry Bog area. That goes right to the little mill pond and always fills up with water when there is a big storm, high tide, nor'easter, and threatens our homes and our property already. I respectfully request that this be denied. The entire project is already too big, and much of it will be covered with concrete, swimming pool, driveway, huge home, which will prevent normal natural absorption on that hill and low-lying area, thereby deflecting water to all of our homes that are about it, and raising the water level for all of us, not to mention the impact it will have on groundwater sewage, as many are on septic systems and not on town sewer. We always talk about protecting and respecting the beauty of Old Cape Cod, the clear and present danger of climate change, increasingly dangerous and impactful storms. The article that I sent to you must be sent out to everyone on the Board of Appeals, because this is what's happening everywhere on the Cape, and we know it will please do not be a party to this destruction of our beloved town. Please acknowledge receipt of this letter, that you will pass it around the entire zoning board respectfully. Then we have a letter from Scott Van Dusen, D-U-S-E-N. And he writes on April 20th, Equitable Trust is the administrator of My Safe House LLC, an equity owned by Patricia Wortham Oldman, who is the sole owner of 331 Main Street. We are writing to object to application number 23-033, seeking to modify the permit to allow for an increase in building coverage and further encroachment into the Coastal Conservancy District. We feel that such modifications would have a significant negative impact on the natural habitat, community, and historic properties of this neighborhood. One of the many great things about Chatham is the town has done a tremendous job to preserve and protect the natural beauty, unique coastal environment, historic charm. The Chatham Conservancy District has two main purposes: to protect persons and property from the hazards of flood and tidal waters due to unsuitable development in or near bogs and marshes along the water and in areas subject to flooding, and to preserve the amenities of the town and conserve the natural conditions. These purposes are vital to save the natural habitat for local wildlife, protect properties from flooding and erosion, and to ensure the safety of drinking water. The proposed special permit is in direct contradiction to these purposes. This permit will further expand the building coverage and significantly reduce the area for ground absorption. This will result in increased flooding, habitat destruction, and septic system issues. It is the goal of the Chatham Conservancy District and the citizens of this community to protect the natural habitat and historic properties of this neighborhood. This development will significantly endanger these goals. For that reason, we respectfully request that this application seeking to modify the special permit be denied. That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here on Microsoft Teams who wishes to speak against or has a specific question on this application?
I see no one in opposition or the question.
Okay, questions from the board. Ginny?
Well, could I respond to just a couple of things they said?
Oh, sure.
Just briefly, it's pretty obvious that perhaps they were misled by the unfortunate typographical error in the ad. But of course, as I'm sure you all recall, the proposed modifications to the main house reduce the footprint of the main house. The cottage is significantly smaller than the existing cottage, which was much closer to the sacred marsh that they're concerned about. So, and the septic system now is much further away from the marsh than the original septic system. So, in your genius, you have approved a project that improves the conservation values of this property by 100%. And so I think that if they were aware of that, they probably would have sent a letter supporting it. Well, maybe not, but the reality is that this project's an improvement, and really all we're talking about, as I say, you approve the size of the house and the design, it's just the number on the plan was incorrect. Thank you.
Question from the board. Ginny?
So, Mr. Riley, I agree that they may have misunderstood the ad, because that was a pretty significant, it was the difference between 244 versus 64, if my math is right. And that changes it actually for, I think, well, I'll speak for myself. First of all, I wanted to say I'm very grateful for your clients, the interest in the investment that they're making in the antique house. I think it's a thoughtful design. It preserves the streetscape of Chatham. So I think I wanted to point that out, because I wasn't here at the hearing on November 3rd, but I did go back and view that, and there was a lot of discussion, as you will recall, about all of it. But in particular, the cottage, which is what we are talking about today. And I agree that it's smaller than what was originally there. It's moved back, which is better than what was originally there. But at that hearing in November of 2022, there appeared to be a value exchange. We're going to give this, give that, and to reach some, concessions among everyone. And so to have it come back today is a disappointment that it's over. Now, albeit 64 square feet, it's not a lot, but how did that happen again?
The culprits will explain.
David Clark, Clark Engineering. So this all started back with the Emerson project from, I think, 3 years ago. And so they came before the board. got approval for this cottage, and.
A cottage.
A cottage. And so the Howdens bought the project, portion of the property from the Emersons and came back last fall. When we got the new plans from the architect, it was stated that the cottage was the same as what the Emersons got approved.
Building coverage wise.
As far as coverage. The architect for the Emersons was Steve Hart. It was a 2-year process trying to get that approved through historic, mainly because Steve drafts by hand. Karen uses computers, as most everybody does now. So we took it that the cottage hadn't changed. Came before you in November, it got approved. We go out to stake the project for construction. We stake it per our plan. The builder calls us up and says, "You're missing 2 feet." Can't understand why. Look at the project plans again from Karen Kempton. There's the 2 feet. When Karen told us that it was the same as before, it was. We went back and looked at the Emerson project and took a hard look at Steve Hart's plan. The 2 feet was there. So it was an error that carried over from Emerson. There was a lot of back and forth between Wendy and Karen Kempton as far as the main house, because that was the big struggle with historic, and all the back and forth was on that. Nobody paid attention to the cottage because our initial idea was nothing changed. So it was an error that carried over from Emerson. Wasn't picked up till we staked it for construction. We would be for you if it was still Emerson's project, because Steve Hart's plans for Emerson called for a 2-foot wider building. It was missed back then. So the error started 3 years ago and got carried through to this project. So Mr. Howden paid Karen Kempton for a 2-foot wider house, went under contract with the builder for a 2-foot wider house. We neglected to catch it on our plan, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, so now the house hasn't changed. It was just an error that didn't get carried forward, that's all. So the house that was approved is still the same, as what, you know.
Paul?
So Bill has thrown everybody else in front of the bus? Is that the idea?
Well, I'm happy to land in front of the bus too. I've been there many times myself.
We've put you there on occasion.
Well, you know,
Yeah, that's-
it's
I have
probably
no
because I
further
belong
questions.
there, but
Randy? Dave?
No, it seems clear to me. The only thing I would ask is, I don't recall, Sarah, I don't recall that for the November hearing, I don't believe we got letters from these same butters who
No.
wrote this time, did we?
no,
We did not.
They didn't express any concerns
No.
at that time.
They did not.
Bob?
So is the foundation that's there today, if I was to go out there and measure it, it agrees with Karen Kempton's drawing?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
So Ambrose is the one that poured the foundation?
Yes.
And so they poured it to Karen Kempton's, this is the print they used to pour?
Yes. They were the one that notified us of the error.
And where, there's about 5 dimensions here, the 2-foot offset on the garage, 18-foot depth, and then the 31.6. Which one of these dimensions is off by 2 feet?
It's the width of the building.
So it's the 18 feet?
Yeah. Yeah, the overall should be 20 on the living space side.
Well, right, the living, so where the chimney is, the
That
face
wall.
where the chimney is, that is 20 feet.
Yes.
And then the garage is 18, so there's a 2-foot offset.
Yeah.
So where's the extra 60? That doesn't make sense. 2 feet, because the living space is 20 by 18. I'm having trouble understanding where the 2 foot is.
I thought about this some, Buck, too. I just want to interject, perhaps inappropriately, but remember the corner boards. You've got to add, that's foundation.
I add 6 inches to the foundation.
Well, it would be less than 6 inches from the corner of the foundation to the corner board.
Yep.
Would be, generally, it looks like it's plywood on the walls there. It would be 1.25 inches out around all sides of the building.
Well, I just want to see where
Yeah, but we-
62 square feet doesn't, I just want to see the dimension on
Yeah,
this print.
so we drew the garage at 16 feet in depth on our plan. So,
You drew it at 16?
yeah, and that should have been a red flag in itself, a 16-foot deep garage, but,
Yeah, normally they're 24 deep.
yeah. And so, that's where, and,
All right, I'll take that as an answer. So the stamp print by you, these numbers in the lower left-hand corner, you did, obviously wasn't verified. Nobody did the square footage on that to confirm it, and it was another party, not you, and it wasn't done in a computer. It looks like she did it on the old boards.
well, yeah, the footprint of the cottage was based upon Steve Hart's plan from 3 years ago.
Okay.
Paul, I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves?
All approves?
Randy approves?
Dave Veach approves.
I do also. Paul?
Well, I think the salient comment was the one that Dave Veach made, which is that we did not hear from these particular people with respect to this issue back when we were actually making the decision about the overall project. But we had a lot of input at that time, and we've had a lot of hearings on this. And I think the change now is really minimal and is not, the size of the change doesn't warrant the comments that are being made. So I think that the application meets our criteria and that we should grant it.
Randy?
The way I look at these is, would this change have made any difference during the hearing? And I did go back and listen. I didn't vote on the hearing, but the big issue was that Dave Veach basically saved this from the jaws of defeat, if you remember, because he convinced the rest to understand that those shrubs, what are they called? Not shrubs, hedges, yes, were going to really block one of the viewpoints.
Right.
And that, he saved it from the jaws of defeat. And so it was nothing about whether this is, 60 foot, So I don't think it would have made any difference, and I support it.
Dave?
Yeah, it's easy for me to see how this took place following. I mean, I measured, it was 2 feet on the plan, and they measured checked the architectural plan, and it all lines up. And certainly, I understand, going from the Emerson family with Steve Hart designing, and then to Karen Kempton's design, and a simple, there's been no change. This is very simple. I think this is a minor issue. It's not substantially more detrimental in any way, and I think we should approve it without.
Well, I don't suspect anybody's going to have the same opinion as me, so it'll probably be approved. But when I see an engineer's stamp print, I take that as the Bible, and I'll be taking a position of abstaining.
Jenny?
While we're rolling the tape back to November 2022, there was something Randy actually said that I thought was apropos. It was something along the lines of perfection gets in the way of wonderful, something like that.
Don't let perfection
get in the way of wonderful. And that's, I agree. I mean, your explanation is sound. As I mentioned, it was disappointing to have it come back because there were so many people there was a lot of conversation about it, and there was a lot that was explained, and then, like I said, there was a value exchange that was achieved at that hearing. But the broader picture of what's going on that property is an improvement, and this is not substantially detrimental, this change. So if I were voting, I would support it.
I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
I'll abstain.
All votes yes.
Yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. I don't think we have anything else today. So, Paul,
I will move to adjourn.
we need
Dave Veach
everybody to
seconds.
vote on this.
Buck votes yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
All votes yes.
Yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. And Sarah, what is the official time?
5:07 PM.
All right. Thank you, one and all. Until next week.